who blew away all the bogus lies and perjury concocted by the prosecutor's office. Betty could have used a Thomas Mesereau.
He's a very sensitive, gentle, creative spirit, a very, very nice, decent person. He likes to see people do well. He likes acts of kindness. He felt he was a person who went around the world trying to be kind to children, particularly disabled children. And to be portrayed this way was a nightmare for him. It was horrifying. So he didn't have to say that to me. All he had to do was look at him to see how nervous he was. He was having trouble eating. He was having trouble sleeping.
That's why he was losing weight.
His children were crying. You know, they knew something was wrong with their father, that he was going through some type of painful ordeal.
You could see it in his children's eyes?
Of course you could. Absolutely. The children love their dad, and he's a wonderful, doting father. I've observed him, and they knew something was wrong. You know, children are intuitive. They pick up things, and it was a very awful experience. It was painful. It was terrifying for him and his family, and God was with us, and we prevailed.
Do you think Michael's ever going to come back to Santa Barbara?
I really don't know. You know, I've not been in touch with them in the last year. I honestly don't know the answer to that.
How many attorneys did you have working and investigators behind the scenes that we never saw in court?
Well, not that many. You know, this was not a sort of dream team concept. I had my law firm partner, Susan Yu, a fabulous lawyer who was at counsel table, Bob Sanger, who was local in Santa Barbara, a great lawyer. He was there too. We had a couple of other attorneys helping us. We had 2, maximum 3 investigators, not like 70 sheriffs that Mr. Sneddon had. We had just 2 or 3 investigators. We kept it lean and we kept it as professional as we could. That's the way we wanted it.
What happened to the attorney that came up from L.A. and he stopped coming? He was with you in the beginning of the trial.
Well, there were some differences that developed. I don't want to go into that. That's the past, but things didn't work out there.
Do you think Michael's going to leave the States permanently because of the bad flavor people like Tom Sneddon have left with him?
I really don't know his plans. You know, I would
He doesn't talk to you anymore.
Well, no, I would talk to him. I just haven't in the last year. We're no longer doing his work. Susan, you and I, we've moved on to other cases, you know, other clients. Talk to his family from time to time. I would hope he comes back at some point, but I think this was a terrifying experience for him. I really do. I think it may be something that he'll have trouble ever getting over. This the terror of being accused falsely of ugly charges like this, facing years in state prison where you don't belong, where you may not survive. It was a horrifying experience. So who knows how it's affected him emotionally? I don't really know the answer to that, except I think any of us would be terrified to be in a situation like that.
From your observations, do you think it's likely it's stultified Michael's creative talent?
I certainly hope not. He's a creative genius. He may be the greatest musical talent in the world. He's a very, very sensitive, creative, intuitive person who loves artistry, loves music, loves being an artist. I would certainly hope not, because he's really made contributions to the world that very few of us can even imagine doing.
Well, he certainly had a lot of followers that were dedicated and kept coming and coming and coming.
Yes, he did, and that just shows you the kind of person he's been throughout his career. It's not just people who supported him because of his music. It was people who supported him because of his humanitarian efforts around the world, his gentle, kind spirit, his desire to improve humanity, to help children. He used to have a rule that before he did any concert anywhere in the world, he would visit a children's hospital and do what he could to cheer up and help children who were disabled or ill. That was a rule of thumb that he had for many, many years. Everywhere in the world he went, he would always insist on visiting a children's hospital. He wanted an International Children's Day to focus attention on the importance of children and how they are raised, the importance of youth. He felt that the increase in violence in America's cities was partly attributed to not focusing the proper attention on our youth. So Michael was very well-intentioned when it came to children around the world, and this was just a nightmare for him. But God was with us, and we came through. We had more media from around the world than the O.J. Simpson and Scott Peterson cases combined, and everyone trying to seduce you into giving them an interview or getting them some information, and usually bad motives, as far as I was concerned. I think they wanted, for the most part, drama and excitement rather than justice, and I had to stay focused, and I lived really like a hermit. That's what I chose to do.
Was this a very expensive
defense for Michael?
It absolutely was, because you had to investigate, all of these alleged witnesses. You had hundreds of thousands of documents extending back from 2 grand juries in the early 90s, a grand jury in this particular case. You had every conceivable type of person from around the world trying to get involved in the case, and the volume of material was immense. You had forensic issues, you had witness issues, you had documents that had to be carefully examined, transcripts from other cases had to be examined. It was a massive undertaking. Because remember, 70 sheriffs raided his home in November of 2003. They had 9 fingerprint experts. I had never seen that in any death penalty case I had handled. They had every type of expert: accident reconstruction, computer graphics, DNA, all types of forensic experts, you name it.
Knowing what you know about these experts, what would you guesstimate the county of Santa Barbara spent on this trial?
I really can't even begin to guesstimate it. I'll tell you why. Because they had people in the DA's office, at the Sheriff's Department, working overtime. We'll never know what overtime hours were put into this. We'll never know what staff hours were put into it. I would have to guess it was the most expensive prosecution in history. I really, truly believe that. When you think about all the investigation that was done in the early 90s, remember there was a Santa Barbara grand jury in the early 90s.
Right.
We know that Mr. Snedden left the country in the mid-90s. He visited at least 2 countries I know of, Australia and Canada. He may have visited others, I don't know. You had investigation going through the 90s. You had a website at the Sheriff's Department looking for information on Michael Jackson. Then you had a second grand jury in Santa Barbara County in this case. Grand juries are expensive. Investigations like this are expensive. You had a 5-month trial, which had to have exhausted tremendous resources in the county of Santa Barbara. I believe it was the most expensive prosecution in history, but I could never guesstimate exactly what it really cost.
Would I be, if I suggested it cost the county $200,000, would I be grossly underestimating?
Oh, that would be absurdly low. My guess would be 10, 20 million.
Would it be safe to say it cost Michael more than $1 million to put on a defense?
I'm not going to talk about costs. I think that's confidential.
You just went for a murder case, didn't you, since the Jackson case in the South somewhere, didn't you?
I've had a couple of capital cases in Alabama. I do at least 1 pro bono death penalty case a year.
How long did that last case in Alabama?
Well, there was one that was dismissed on the day of trial.
Really?
Yes. There was a second that settled on the day of trial. The client will do approximately 1 year. There was one that went
and they had him up for capital...
Yes, capital murder.
Capital murder.
There was one that went to trial. He was acquitted of capital murder. He was convicted on some lesser charges. And I have a 4th one that's going to trial next month in Bessemer, Alabama.
And God is blessing you.
He has, and I try to do what I can to return something to society. I think more lawyers should do that. That's something I believe in.
Barnes & Noble, where Aphrodite Jones is signing her new book, Michael Jackson Conspiracy. And it really, really was a conspiracy. You just heard from Tom Mesereau, Chief Counsel for Michael Jackson. This is William Wagener.
And the world will be better for this. That one man scorned and covered with scars, still strong with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable star.
You're defending your family in your house. You expose yourself to danger, but nobody ever should be asked to sacrifice themselves.